Lungs are part of the respiratory system, which is made up of organs that help us to breathe. All of these organs have their own unique functions that enable us to breathe as we do on average 23,000 times a day. The respiratory system does two very important things. It brings oxygen into our body, which we need for ourselves to live and function properly. And secondly, it allows us to exhale carbon dioxide from our body. Carbon dioxide is the waste gas that is produced as a part of the body's energy-making process. The respiratory system includes the nose and nasal cavity, which perform a number of important functions, such as providing us with a sense of smell, warming and moistening the air we breathe in, filtering out irritants such as dust, and assisting us in the development of sound. The throat, also known as the pharynx, is a tube that carries air from the nasal cavity through the voice box, otherwise known as the larynx, down into the windpipe or trachea. The trachea then splits into two airways which carry the air into the lungs. These airways are called the bronchi, which extend into the bronchioles. The bronchi branch out many times throughout the lungs until they eventually form tiny, thin-walled air sacs or alveoli. The process of breathing air into the lungs is called inhalation, and the process of breathing it out is called exhalation. As you watch the inhalation through the nose, throat, voice box, and into the bronchi, you will notice the lungs inflating. As we breathe in, muscles are working to inflate the lungs. The diaphragm, a large shade of muscle which stretches across our chest under the rib cage, does most of the work during inhalation, causing the chest to expand as the lungs filled with air. The air travels down to the end of the bronchi where it enters the tiny air sacs called alveoli. The alveoli are filled with oxygen from the air traveling down from the bronchi. Covering each alveolus is a whole network of tiny blood vessels called capillaries. Within the alveolus, the oxygen enters the bloodstream through a process called gas exchange. The alveoli have extremely thin walls with a large surface area lined with fluid to enable gases to dissolve. The oxygen particles from the inhaled air pass through the walls of the alveoli and surrounding capillaries and into the red blood cells inside. The oxygen particles are then carried in the blood by structures called arteries. The arteries carry oxygenated blood around the body to all your organs and tissues. This process is essential for our well-being. As the oxygen particles are diffused through the walls of the alveoli into the bloodstream, carbon dioxide, a waste product of the body, is traveling in the opposite direction. The deoxygenated blood is carried in veins from the organs and tissues back to the lungs. Carbon dioxide is diffused from the blood through the capillaries and into the air within the alveolus. Now that the air in the alveoli is saturated with carbon dioxide, the exhalation can now occur. As the diaphragm relaxes and air is forced out of the lungs, the air travels back up the bronchi and is expired into the atmosphere. The lungs are a lot like balloons. They require energy to expand, but no energy is needed to get air out. This makes exhalation an automatic response after inhalation. Now you know the basics of the respiratory system. This knowledge will help you to understand how spirometry works and why it is so important.